3, 2, now.
Hey everybody, how's everyone doing tonight?
Fantastic.
Hey, I'm Kristen Sanchez. I am the events executive with Higher Things. Joining me tonight, I've got Pastor Harrison Goodman right here to my left, and he is the content executive for Higher Things. All right. And tonight we are going to pull the curtain back a little bit. So Higher Things has been putting on conferences, summer conferences for this will be 22 years. And we at those conferences preach, we teach, we do all the good gospel things. And one of the hallmarks of that is our plenary sessions. And our plenary sessions are meant to sort of drive home the theme of the conference. And this summer's conference is themed for you. It's sort of a greatest hits of one of our HT themes in the past 15 years ago, and we're bringing it back this year. So we've got our 4 plenary speakers for this summer here, and they're going to walk through just a little bit of a brainstorming session, getting themselves ready for their plenaries this summer. And before we jump into that, I'm going to do some roundtable introductions. All right, so starting at my top right, we've got President Pastor Duane.
Should we start introducing ourselves?
California. Pastor, you want to wave?
We should. Are we still live?
We are live. You get her back?
We're professionals, people.
Look
Don't
at
worry
us.
about it.
See, we're back.
It's all under control.
Pastor Duane Bamsch, president of HT. He's the pastor of Grace Lutheran Church, Grass Valley, California. Say hey.
Great to be with y'all tonight.
Thanks, Pastor. Joining him, so he is a plenary for our Bozeman, Montana conference, Montana State University, and joining him at that conference is going to be Reverend Dr. Matt Richard. He is the pastor of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Minot, North Dakota. Hey, Pastor.
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
Sure can. We got you.
Great. Good to be here.
After that week, we're going to be jumping over to Valparaiso University at Valpo, Indiana, and that's going to be Pastor Chris Hull. And he is the pastor of Zion Lutheran Church in Tomball, Texas. Pastor, say hi.
Hey!
There's the excitement.
Nicely done.
There we go.
And to round
Salute.
it
Fun
out,
times.
we have Reverend Dr. Todd Pepperkorn, and he is the Associate Professor of Pastoral Ministry and Missions at Concordia Theological Seminary in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Did I get that all right?
That is such a mouthful.
Amazing.
But yes, good
Amazing.
job.
And fun fact about Pastor Pepperkorn is he's actually a founder of Higher Things. So we're bringing him back 22 years later. He's been around for a while, but we're letting him have the stage again.
Almost dead.
No, please don't say that. So, we just want to get a little bit of a sort of behind the curtain look at how you guys go about preparing for a plenary. All of you guys have done this before for us. Thank you for that. And we're excited to have you back on stage again this summer. We will let you take it away, and Pastor Goodman and I will pepper some things in as we go, but we just want to kind of let you guys go, let you guys do a little bit of chatting.
So I'm gonna because of awkward silence jump in and say, like, am I the only
When I think
one?
awkward silence, I think of you.
Awkward anything, really. Am I the only one who puts off plenary planning until somebody starts sending me emails, or are you guys all diligently ahead of me?
Wait, we're supposed to start?
Have you met pastors before?
It's only May.
trust you
We've
all.
got like 2 months. Plenty of time.
See, this is
Plenty
what happens.
time.
This is why we book these fireside chats, to get them
Just a
started.
reminder.
All right.
One of the things I do is I think of the theme, but for me, picking up a book is fine, and to study is fine. But for me, it's ruminating on it and contemplating how do you speak it. It's one thing to be able to just kind of talk about for you theologically speaking and from a book, but then how do you talk to a diverse audience of people? And so for me, it's been one of those things that's just kind of been analyzing culture and watching culture and how are people thinking. And that kind of dictates how we talk about it, I would say. So one of the things over the last couple of months, I've been doing some substitute teaching on Mondays on my day off. I go substitute teach at the Surrey High School where my wife works. She's a teacher there. And so I'm just asking youth all these questions, in the high school. And I ask my confirmation students questions and just kind of processing, where's the culture? I mean, I'm 43 and as a lot of my confirmation students say, that I am borderline irrelevant, which is pretty cool to acknowledge that. But
it makes us over the border, Duane.
Yeah.
So I'll ask them questions. I'll say, what is the, and I always use the word what is the TikTok saying lately, or what is the Google saying, or the YouTube, and it's just great to sound relevant. But I think part of it is, I look at everybody here, and I know several of you guys. I theologically speaking, we know the theology, but it's like, how do we communicate? How do we speak that? What is the, I hate using the word relevance. I don't like that word relevance, but in essence, what is the relevance of that in the context? And I think for you is pretty huge right now, especially for today's youth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've been spending a little bit more intentional time thinking about even just my preaching and my Bible study preparation, because the concept of "for you" is so foundational, so important to the comfort of the gospel. That, am I speaking that to my people, to my sheep, whatever age they are, whether it's my little 3-year-old or my 92-year-old member and everybody in between, and then am I articulating it well enough to them? And is that helping to inform me on where we're going to go this summer? Okay, so I need to focus and narrow it to this certain demographic in a sense, but not really. But yeah, how do we speak the "for you" to this diverse group of young adults from all over the country gathered together? Are they any different from the people we see on Sunday morning? Yes and no. So they need to hear the same thing, but yeah, being aware of what the world is saying to them. That's the filter. We got to pass this all through.
Somebody speak for the world. What's the world saying to them? Like, it's this great foil that we always sort of put up there, and sort
we
of
are the world.
But yeah,
we are the children.
Really, speaking of that word, relevant.
Sounds like you've got that unlocked. So why don't you tell us about that, Pastor Pepperkorn?
Sorry, I was just channeling a song from many moons ago. Here's how I've been thinking about this question in two ways. One is two biblical images, and the biblical images that have been kind of running through my head is one, the Canaanite woman from Matthew 15. I had one of my colleagues here at the seminary say in a very, I won't tell you who it is, but in a very kind of gruff Brooklyn sort of accent, say to me essentially, "For you, how did that work for the Canaanite woman?" So I've been thinking about "for you" in that regard, where clearly on the surface, the answer was "not for you," kind of like a bad Seinfeld skit there. No soup for you, no Jesus for you. And then the other is the verba, given and shed for you for the forgiveness of sins. So those are kind of the two biblical images that I've been bouncing back and forth. One where the "for you" is hidden until everything is laid bare, but the crumbs. And then the other is bringing that home in the most clear, direct language possible. So those are the two biblical images that I've been bouncing off. Now, juxtaposing that against the fact that in my read of the TikToks, as you would put it, Pastor Richard, my read of the TikToks is that our kind of state is not for you, but it is against you. That we are defined largely by who we are against, what we are opposed to, what we perceive as what is wrong, and kind of how am I how am I different from everybody else, and why are they wrong? So when I look at, the person across the way from me, I am not looking at someone that says Jesus died for you. I'm looking at them as a different color, a different creed, a different, a something different. And because of that, everything in our world kind of wants me to be isolated from them, divided against them, not with them or for them, far less confess our Lord's orientation toward them. And so there's some interesting play there that I don't know where it's going to go yet. That's kind of how I would put it. But man, oh man, I am just constantly stunned at how much that against you sentiment is just, it's everywhere. It's all over.
It's the hardest thing to get people past.
It is.
That Jesus, and I've made a point of saying this, in Bible classes and things like that too lately, is when we're talking about something cultural or something terrible that happens, or someone who a lot of people don't like. Jesus died for that person too. Jesus loves that person too. And it's really hard to say that sometimes because we're so used to that against.
To vilify, it's a lot easier to lob grenades.
Pastor Hall, everything is fun for you. So tag in on this one. How do you deal with the enmity of the world and still smile so much?
Well, it's kind of like the thief on the cross, right? When he died and got to the pearly gates, and St. Peter wasn't there yet because he was still alive.
He snuck in.
Yeah. They said, what are you doing here? And he didn't say anything except for, that guy on the cross said I could come in. That guy hanging there in the middle said, I can be with him today in paradise, even though I'm hanging here on a cross, guilty of my transgressions. That, at the end of the day, is what everyone struggles with, no matter who's against them and who they're against. The demons, the devil, the old Adam never leave you alone. When you lay your head down at night, you have that guilt. Am I worth being loved by God? I mean, that's what you go through. And I mean, that's what we're speaking to this summer is a bunch of teenagers. That identity. Am I loved? I mean, I remember I didn't go out on my first date until I was 18 years old. And thanks be to God, she's my wife now. So there you go. But the loneliness, the rejection, all these things that go into it, to know that there's one person that is for me, that loves me, warts, moles, faults, everything, adores me, died for me, gave everything up for me. He did it for you too. He did it for everybody. He didn't ask, what was your past? What are you up to in the present? How many followers do you have? How many dislikes do you have? He just said, I'm going to do it for you. And he gave it all up for you. And that gives you a smile. That gives you joy in the midst of sorrow. That gives you happiness in the midst of pain. But we have to tell each other that every day. Hey, remember, Jesus still loves you. And add the still, because you may forget it. I did something that could harm that, prevent that, make him stop doing that, because that's how the world acts. When I mess up too many times, they abandon me, and I do the same to others. But Jesus doesn't do it. He loves you. He died for you. He rose for you. He baptizes you. He communes you. He absolves you. No matter the sin, no matter you be Cain the murderer, Rahab the prostitute, Saul the persecutor, David the adulterer, Peter the denier, Judas the betrayer, Thomas the doubter, you are forgiven. And that's the greatest and most freeing thing you can hear. So yeah, you got a smile on your face because now you're kind of a moron. And that's okay. Be a joyful moron in the world. Because Jesus said you get to not only go to heaven, you get to go to church too. And you get to go in the midst of your neighbor's chaos to bring them love that they won't get anywhere else.
So how does this actually play out in these kids' lives? How do they actually go out? They're going to sit for 4 days, hear all of this for 4 days, and it's going to be, I'm sure, much more, though you guys are pretty eloquent tonight. I'm pretty impressed. But much more put together even by then.
We'll get over it.
Yeah, I know. They're going to leave and they're going to go and they're going to go home. So how does it actually play out for them to live their life in not that incredible bubble of being told for 4 days straight that this is for you?
You know, when this summer, was it this summer, last summer? It's probably the summer before, we went up to my hometown and they have this big street fair, and you go downtown and they have the classic cars out front and on Main Street, and they have all the vendors out and different people handing out things. And I think it was 2 years ago, my little daughter was with, and we had heard the news that there was free ice cream. And so she's holding my hand. She's like, "Daddy, where's the free ice cream?" I'm like, "I don't know, you know." And so the whole time, free ice cream. Where's ice cream? Looking everywhere. Is ice cream over there? No, it's not over there. It's over there. No. And finally, you know, we came up on the ice cream, and he goes, "Oh, 2 ice creams here for you." You know, gives us the ice cream, and I turn, and I give to her, my little girl. "Here's the ice cream for you." "Really, Daddy?" "Yeah, really." I mean, it's like, it's right here. It's in my hands. Really, you know. And so the point being is this: is, you know, we can hear about the forgiveness of sins. You know, Christ did it. Christ forgives sins. And it's like that news of there being free ice cream. But I would say until we hear the "for you," until it's put right into our hands and we're given it, that's when the rubber meets the road. And so when we think about it from the perspective of the church, the beauty of the church should be, I say should, it should be that one place where you go every single Sunday. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the week. You can have up, down, left, right. You can have just an absolute chaotic week. All hell can break loose in life. You know, the world can be turned upside down. But when you come to that font, you see that font. When you come to that communion rail, you'll hear the consistent word, "Christ for you." And then you get to receive not ice cream, but the body and blood of Christ. And know right there in that moment, in that time, regardless of what the world says, regardless of what everybody else is saying, what even's going on in your life, what's even going on in your own feelings, you know, right then and right there in that place, Christ is for you, that assurance. And so I would hope that this summer would drive us all back to our altars, back to those pulpits, back to those fonts, consistently, in spite of all that the world does. And another part of this too is all that the world takes. I mean, the world takes and takes and takes and takes and takes. And then to come to that church and to be given to and to receive and to know without a shadow of a doubt with assurance that Christ is for me. So I would hope it drive us back to those fonts and drive us back to those altars and those pulpits, back to our pastors, the youth back to their pastors, so their pastors can have that joy of saying Jesus is for you.
So in some respects, that's kind of what Higher Things has always been about, and that is sort of uncovering and pointing out, connecting the dots, if you will, to what happens every Sunday in the divine service at home. And the benefit of going somewhere else and yet kind of not going somewhere else is really huge, because you know what this can teach is my pastor may be a dork, but there's a lot of them. And that he's not the only dork out there. One, but also that these things that appear ordinary are not ordinary. The extraordinary is always hidden under the ordinary, and that God delights in giving his gifts in these backwards, inside out, upside down ways. And that maybe what we can do at a conference like this summer is help these young adults to sort of recognize, yeah, this is going on. This is not just going on for 4 days, but this is always going on. This never stops going on. And how amazing it is to see that these things are happening, and that this actually gives me a lens through which I can look at the world. That I can see the world not as out to get me, but as God's gift to me. So that even when the chaotic weeks happen, or worse, even when those things happen, there is a sense of, yep, God is still at work, even in the midst of that sorrow and whatever it might be. Thinking of the hymn, "If God Himself be for us, I may a host defy." And there are lots of hymns that we could probably pull in. It might be worth pulling in to kind of look and see. All right, so how many of them sort of make this tie? Because that could be a lot of fun.
So I was thinking, and since I don't have to talk, I get to like listen to all of you this year. I'm really excited. It's interesting that most of the people spend all of their lives trying to make sure that God's law is not for them. And the gospel is the one thing that flips the whole thing on their head. Like, I don't want to be accused by this law. How can I make the law not for me? And then the gospel comes in, and it speaks a for you that completely changes the whole dynamic, and it flips everything on its head. How do we deal with law and gospel in these words for you? President Bamsch.
Law and gospel for you. And that we've got to look at that law not as something to be afraid of and terrified of on its face, because Jesus has already been there for us. Jesus has fulfilled that law for us. So now we look at that law, we look at the commands of God, and we say, okay, Jesus has already done this for me. He's done it perfectly. There's no way that I can do as good of a job keeping this law as Jesus did. And that's what terrified me, is that I was never able to measure up to what God said. Be perfect as I am perfect. That's the rule. That's the law. If you can't do that, too bad. You're out. And then, like the thief on the cross, but Jesus said, I'm okay. Jesus has done this for me. And so now we can look at that law through that lens now of, this helps me navigate the world that is against me. This helps me to love my neighbors who I kind of like, but it also helps me love the neighbors that I don't want to like. And that's kind of the part where I said that for the most part, it's, the law can be good in the sense that it gives us, we have this opportunity, but then there's also that side where, Jesus died for those people too. When Jesus says, love your neighbor, it's everybody. Your neighbor is everybody who isn't you. So how do I love the person that I don't really want to love? How do I love the person that I don't think is lovable? Well, Jesus has done that for me. So if he's done that for me, how can I explore loving the people that aren't necessarily lovable to me? How can I take myself down a notch? Not that's your first commandment thing. Who's in charge? God the Father's in charge. The Trinity is in charge. I'm along for the ride. So I'm not going to tell God how this works. He says I'm supposed to love my neighbors. My neighbors are those folks. So here's some guidelines. Here's the ways that God says I should love them. Here's some things to look at, by speaking well of them and not gossiping about them, by not trying to take things from them that don't belong to me, all the way down the line, by not coveting the things that they have that aren't mine to have. So the law is there to help us love those around us as God has already loved us in Christ. It doesn't make it easy. We struggle with it every day. But thanks be to God that when we screw it up, He's right there to say, I forgive you. Let's try this again.
Is there ever a moment, ever a time when these gifts we've been talking about are not for you or for the hearer, for the listener?
Well, kind of building off what was just stated, you think about, the gifts that the Lord gives, the for you gifts, the forgiveness, life, and salvation. They're for you and me, for us. And then we think of like the 10 Commandments too, and all the gifts that are embedded in the 10 Commandments. I like our catechism that always has like a fourth commandment: honor mom and dad. Dad, mom, right? In parentheses it says authority, right? And it's like, well, what is that? And then you get to fifth commandment says, hey, don't murder, right? And in parentheses it says life. And so God gives us these gifts of authority, of authority as gifts. He gives us the gift of life from the womb to the grave. He gives us the gift of marriage. He gives us the gift of a good reputation and possessions and contentment. And all these things are wonderful gifts that are given to us. And Matt Richard comes along and I mess it up for myself. Just every day. It's like, we wake up in the morning, we say, in the morning prayer, Luther's morning prayer, keep me from sinning. And then at the very end of the day, you're like, I messed up again, Lord have mercy. And yet in spite of that, the Lord still gives us good gifts, but our sinful nature has this way of perverting good gifts, and destroying it. It's like, you see this with kids all the time. And I think all of us have this, if you're on the beach, and we're going to be going on a vacation this summer, and we're going to be going to the ocean for the first time, and I'm kind of excited because I'm going to build a huge sandcastle with my kids. It's really kind of fun to do that. There's always that one kid who comes along and just can't help himself. He just wants to destroy it, And I have to admit, that kid comes on me too. It's like I see something, you just want to knock it down, right? If somebody's building a card house, you just want to.
For the record,
you want to knock it down, right?
Yeah, he's just
but our old Adam, our sinful nature just can't help itself. It just destroys these gifts and blows it up. And the Lord longs to give us the gift of authority and the gift of life, the gift of property and possession and contentment, all these wonderful gifts, and we just can't help ourselves. And it's some understanding of ourselves and how we work, and in a lot of ways too is being harder on our old Adam too, disciplining the sinful nature. And it's like, we're not going to do this by God's grace. That's not who I belong to. That's not who I've been redeemed unto. I've been redeemed from darkness to light. I'm a child of the light. I belong to light. I belong to gifts. I'm meant to walk in gifts given to me. And so, our old Adam, blows things up and blows the for you up and messes it up not only for ourselves but for everyone else. And that's what we say, thanks be to God that He continues to keep on giving gifts, in spite of us knocking those card houses down or those sandcastles down to the ground.
I have two things. Thing number one, has anyone else noticed that Reverend Hull keeps getting progressively darker and his face gets shinier? I think he's becoming a vampire. I mean, I'm kind of getting a Twilight vibe from him.
I get the werewolf thing more. Werewolf is better.
I can see the werewolf. I can see the werewolf thing. You could probably rock the werewolf. Okay. So all of that's number one. Number two is is, can we say that the law is for you in this way? So this is let's figure out if Pepperkorn's a heretic. I play this with my students all the time. It's great.
Fun game.
Can we say that the law of God is for you, in the sense that the law of God is good and wise, and the law of God is there in order to protect, to guard the gifts that God gives, as Pastor Richard has rightly been kind of holding up. So the law of God is good and right, but we are not for the law. The law is for me, but I am not for the law. That is, I cannot see this way of being as good because of my sin. I cannot see love of neighbor as a good thing because of my sin. And so when I look at the law, I hate the law, because the law points me to my failure and to all of this other stuff. But I think it's important to kind of recognize that even the law is given for you. It's in the sense that God doesn't give it to you because he hates you. God doesn't give the law in order to try to destroy you or to harm you or to cast you into hell. Do you think it'd be helpful for us? And I'm really kind of asking my other three co-speakers here. Is it going to be helpful for us to talk about things like God's alien work and his proper work? Is that a helpful way of thinking about this for you language of the law is for you? And how is it that the law is for you in a way that is different from how the gospel is for you, how Christ is for you? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Or am I just still thinking in California language here?
Oh man, you froze him.
Oh.
I'm not. No, I get it. I get what he's saying. My nocturnal instincts have kicked in now.
Yeah, I see that.
I chose a quiet spot, but now I look like I'm a mystical person coming to.
Yeah,
to
you're kind of looking at
everybody.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, I do. I look like I belong on an Eastern Orthodox wall in Central Greece or something. You know.
Yep. I've always thought that of you. So
Yeah, I need the hat. I like the hat.
Oh yeah, it's all about the hat.
I mean, the reality of the law is that the law is not given to save us. The law is not given to redeem us. The law, we have the three uses. We all know this, the curb and the mirror and the guide. It does these things, but it all comes to serving the gospel. If the gospel, you don't just preach the law. So when God gives us the law, he does so that we may hear Christ alone. We sing it in our hymn, right? 555, faith clings to Jesus's cross alone and rests in him unceasing. The law knocks all of it out of you and says there's nothing you can cling to in and of yourself. It's like a parent when I tell my son, you're not a good swimmer. You're not the next Michael Phelps. It's not because I hate him. I love him to death and don't want him to waste his time. No, I do tell him that, but maybe that's because I'm a mean parent. I don't know. But
you don't want to drive him to swim lessons. Don't deny it.
I really don't. I don't want to waste the time doing that and the gas money. I mean, come on. But
this is all not for you. It's all about you, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
It all makes sense now.
But when your pastor preaches the law for you on Sunday morning or on Tuesday afternoon or Thursday morning, whenever he preaches the law for you, he is always preaching this with the desire and intent, because he's been sent to do so by Christ, to preach the blood, wounds, and death of Jesus for your salvation. He doesn't just walk in the room and preach the law to you. Even if you are an unrepentant, like an openly unrepentant sinner, the law is still preached to serve you, knowing who Jesus is for you.
Sure, absolutely.
So yeah,
it's
but that
there
alien work
in
of
order
God,
to serve the gospel. It's
so that would be that alien and proper work. Yes, It's right there. This is not the end all here. The law is there on your pilgrimage, but it is not the end all of your pilgrimage under the new heavens and new earth.
Right. So, nor is it the telos. It's not. It's not the point.
No,
ultimately.
Jesus is. He is what he says in Matthew 5:17. I came not that to abolish, but to fulfill them. Paul calls him the telos nomos. He's the end of the law, the fulfillment of it. And we fulfill the law now by faith in he who has satisfied. Well, I think the apology helps with this. Article 4, somewhere in the 200s, I don't know where. It says, we by faith now keep the law, yet we cannot satisfy it. Christ has satisfied the law for us. He has satisfied every single dot and iota. But what does it mean to keep? We think to keep means to satisfy it. To keep means to treasure it. To keep means to say, hey, this is something valuable that has a purpose, that has a meaning. It's like if I tell someone to keep my kid for me for the afternoon. I'm not saying you now are their parent. I'm just saying, hey, make sure they don't kill themselves. Make sure they don't put their finger in a socket. And in the meantime, could you teach them something good? You know how to drive a stick shift. I don't. Teach them that. Not my 4-year-old daughter, but maybe my 14-year-old. No, probably not him either. But the reality is to keep something is to value it, to keep it in the manner God has given it. And the law was never given to save you. It's meant to tell you you can't save yourself, and that one has done it for you. So
Pastor,
it's fun times.
You're making a joke, Pastor Pepperkorn, but I mean, old Adam always wants to make the law about him. It's still about Jesus.
I know.
And so to say
I'm
for you versus about you, yeah, I mean, that was profound.
And I think that goes back to Kristen's question about, is there anybody that that the for you is not for? And especially, the gospel right now, we've been talking in glowing terms, obviously and properly and rightly, about the gifts of God for you and the comfort that we receive from the gifts that are for you, life, forgiveness, and life and salvation, and that sure and certain hope of touching the water in the font and remembering your baptism there, tasting and seeing that the Lord is good upon your tongue, and receiving the tabernacled Christ into yourself for your forgiveness and salvation for you. But yeah, there are those people who aren't there. We don't just fling open the doors and say, y'all come and receive these precious gifts. And that's where sort of we have that engagement with the TikToks and whatnot and the world and leading along those who are outside of our fellowship, those who are outside of the family of faith, those who are outside of the church. And this is kind of my people, we're kind of having a little bit of this discussion right now about that friction of the world and the church, and how do you get past that friction and make some inroads into speaking the gospel to those who so desperately need it, those who are outside of the faith. And bringing them in so that they do understand and recognize that Jesus is for them. They're terrified of the law in the sense, the church is all about the rules, and you've got to do this, and God is looking down on you, and he's mad at you, and how can a God who really says he loves people love people when these things happen, and so you've got to sort of work through all of that. And bring them along, and in a sense, this is that sort of that art of how do you apply the law and say that is sin, but then also say, Jesus is for you. Jesus does love you. Jesus has a place for you. I want you to understand that. And we've got to kind of get through the noise and the junk and the baggage and the broken things, so that you can see how much your Lord Jesus loves you. but we can't do that just by opening the doors wide and say, come on in.
You know, one thing I'm thinking about is, as you guys are sharing here, this could be any number of my shut-ins in my current congregation, or the shut-ins in previous church. I'm thinking one particular. I was doing a vacancy once upon a time for another church, and she would make this sweet old saint. She'd make apple pie or whatever dessert it was, and you go and you eat a piece. And then first time I ate a piece, and she's like, "Well, here, have another one." And you just say, "I had a piece." And you're like, no, I'm not super overweight by any means, but try to somewhat watch what I eat. And I'm like, no, I'm okay. She's like, no, have another one, and she's like, I'm like, no, no, I insist, have another one. And finally, it's just like, fine, and there's a persistency, a consistency, and a real persistent. It's for you. She just kept on giving it. And
I didn't make this for myself.
But in a lot of ways, though, I think I've noticed this, and this is just probably, I don't know if it's just my upbringing or the pastors I've been around. The one thing that I really try to stress is, as I think about the for you, there's almost I don't, if I hear me right when I say it's almost like an aggressiveness. We oftentimes speak the gospel, and it's like Jesus loves you, and we always think like flowers and prettiness and
right.
and just flowy
like
letter. Yeah, it's just but the for you is kind of like that lady who's insisting. She was actually almost get irritated, like, no, you need another piece, and the for you is an aggressive way of saying, this forgiveness is for you right here, for you that I'm speaking to. And one thing I've been kind of, like I said, I've been thinking about is just how this for you can almost be in a sense where an aggressive in a good way, of delivering that assurance, and pushing it into the ears, putting the cross on the head and saying, this is for you. And it's like that persistent lady giving it to you as a gift, so that we might know with assurance that it's for us.
So let me see if I can interpret this. And you guys maybe are familiar with the term Minnesota nice. Do you know this? Do you know this term, Minnesota nice? Sometimes it's called Midwest nice, or Iowa nice for you people. But just this notion of there is a politeness and a sort of passivity to how you interact with other people. What I hear you saying, Pastor, is that we need to be less Minnesota nice about the gospel and more kind of Brooklyn aggressive about the gospel.
Yeah.
Like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, there is a sense where, because of the level and the amount of noise that we kind of experience today in our lives, that it is kind of hard to have a voice sort of cut through all of the noise and get to the point. Some of you know that my wife is a singer. She's an opera singer, and there is a term that is used in vocal instruction, and the word is squealo. It's one of my favorite words, not just because it reminds me of my wife. Squillo. Squealo is the property in a voice where a voice can cut through an entire orchestra and be heard. So if you go to and it doesn't kind of matter what it is, but there are some voices. And, the best example of squealo is, of course, a 2-year-old in church has a remarkable level of squealo so that their voice will cut through absolutely everything. And a good singer can do that. This kind of resonance that has overtones that line up just right. And there is a sense where that for you has to have a squealo about it. It has to have a way of cutting through the cacophony of the world. and that is not easy or obvious. And that's why it's so important for us as proclaimers of the gospel to be constantly reflecting on this, on the noise and on the gospel, so that we can think through, how do I cut through all of this and actually have the apple pie of the gospel be heard in the middle of everything else.
That brings us a good point. I mean, where else? I mean, just considering culture as a whole and everything that we see and hear, I mean, where else are we hearing a "for you"? I can't. Anytime I do hear a "for you," I'm always suspicious. I'm like, okay, well, if I sign up for that, or if I take that, then is my email going to be sold off, and I'm going to get 1,000 emails, or is my cell phone number going to be sold off, and I have telemarketers calling to get me on the back end? You know what I mean? And so I guess where else are we hearing that "for you"? And think about how culture drowns that out. And then even when people hear the "for you," it's like, for me, yeah, but what's the catch, right? And I've heard this stated before that when we speak the gospel, we say Christ did it for you, and it's a period. It's not a ... It's not a comma. It's not a colon. It's for you, period, full stop. And the gifts are given, and that's it. You let go. There's no strings attached. And so part of the "for you" is it's all for you, and it's done for you. It's complete, and no strings attached. There's not going to be anything coming on the backside to take from you. And so I think something I think we should. I guess I will contemplate. I'm going to try to contemplate where else in this world are we hearing the "for yous" as gifts that are given free of charge. And we do hear it, but there's always a catch.
I've got a movie clip for us. Okay, this is a Higher Things classic that we should consider using. In the words of the Bard, life is pain. Anyone who tells you anything else is just selling you something.
Yep.
I used that line 2 weeks ago in my sermon. I did quote it. I did, and then one of my elders goes, "Did you just quote Princess Bride?" I'm like, "Yes, I did."
Yep.
I like the squealo.
Yeah.
I wonder, since it's your idea and I don't steal things, because I like the 6th, 7th, 8th. I don't know. It's one of them. I should probably get those straight.
Yeah.
You got a couple.
Wouldn't it be great if your plenary opens with the cross of Christ with just squealo on it? Reality that the cross just breaks through everything, literally everything. The darkest thoughts you've had, the cross breaks through it. The gloomiest days you've had, the cross breaks through it. Why should cross and trial grieve me? I mean, that's the hymn. That's our hymn. That's the reality. Right. Gerhard buries his wife, buries his kids, buries everyone else. They kick him out of his church because he's Lutheran. And what does he have? Squealo, the cross, the empty tomb, the font, the altar. But then the best thing, and this is something we haven't talked about tonight, and me and my darkness has thought about. What is the one? There's 2 gifts we have not talked about. That is the squealo, the "for you" bursting forth, and that is the mutual consolation of the brethren. You ask Miss Coordinator, Miss in charge, you guide us all. Who is it not? The reality is, how do you take this back home with you? You're going back home with brothers and sisters in Christ. You're going back home with people. Don't hide it in. The devil does not want you talking to them. He wants you alone. He wants you alone with your thoughts. And who does he send you? A stupid Nathan or dumb apostles to Thomas. He says, hey, boom, breaking forth into your life, the reality that the new heavens and new earth is for you. And you have those brothers and sisters in Christ, and they have you. And then you have your pastor who will hear, even if it's the darkest, dirtiest, filthiest thing you've ever thought or done. And he's not going to hear it and then say, get lost. He's going to yell out a squealo and say, Jesus did this for you. this sin, it's gone. It's drowned in the blood of Jesus. It's hidden in his wounds, and Jesus doesn't play hide and seek. It's done. Far as removed as the east is from the west. His death is for you. That's one of I love at Higher Things that we have confession and absolution. I've done it a couple times there. And I guess, I don't know, maybe it's the HR Higher Things person has to talk to me. I'm not allowed to do this. Maybe I hug everybody afterwards. I'm a hugger. I'm like Lotso hugging Bear from Toy Story, except I'm not a bad guy, but I do smell like strawberries sometimes. But the reality is, what's sweeter?
Maybe you're more like Baybacks.
Yes. There we go. I'm Baymax. I am. Like when you talked about not eating pieces of pie, I'm like, who's this? I took the whole thing from Grandma. I'm like, thank you. I'm going to eat the rest of this in the car on the way home.
I feel like we've gone down a strange path.
I'm baptized and I'm going to heaven soon. It speeds that pie speeds my life's endeavor to be with Christ forever. So I'm gonna eat it, baby.
That piece of pie is for me.
Yeah, this is for me. And you got any ice cream, Grandma? Bring it over.
Oh,
so I tell you.
Thank you. Man. I want to thank you guys all so much for dropping all of these little nuggets of goodness that you did for us tonight.
That's definitely the note we're going out on.
That's absolutely the note we're going out on. And I cannot wait to see this come to fruition this summer. For those of you guys watching, we've got 2 conferences coming up in Bozeman, Montana, Valpo, Indiana. You can find all the information on our website. We hope you've enjoyed this little behind the curtain look, and thanks, guys. Thank you for this very much.
You bet. And I'd just like to point this one out to you too. This is something that we do every month for our MyHT Gold subscribers. If you're coming to a conference, this is something you get. You get to see at least a few of us do something as wonderful as talk about pie. With all of that joy every month. So keep tuning in.
For you.
Everybody, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Absolutely.